it's an extraordinary pleasure to welcome Aries Arugay and Aim Sinpeng to give this talk today. Aries is from the Philippines, Aim is from Thailand. Aim's currently at the University of Sydney. Aries is at the University of the Philippines. They have both in the past been selected as Young Fellows of the Southeast Asia Research Group, which Alan Hickman and I are co-coordinators of. And what we've brought them in here for, in part, they've been here for the whole week, and it's going to be part of an ongoing kind of series we're going to have through WCED, the Weiser Center for Emerging Democracies, bringing scholars in from Southeast Asia and who work on Southeast Asia for extended stays, more than just give a single talk, and to work on their research projects, get feedback, and the like. So Aim and Aries are both working on individual book projects, both related to civil society, military intervention in Southeast Asia, really fantastic book projects. And they both were able to do little mini book workshops on Wednesday. So they were here for that. And it was great that Christiane and CSES were able, while we had them here, to have them in for a Friday lecture on their joint research. This is newer research that they're both working on, which, as you'll see, relates to social media and evolving problems with democracy in Southeast Asia. So I won't take any more time, but Aim and Aries, very good old friends. You're going to enjoy them immensely. We're thrilled to have them here. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. On behalf of AIM, we would like to thank Christy from CISEAS, as well as Dan from WCED for having us here. It's a genuine pleasure. This is just a beautiful university town that we've been enjoying. We've been going around town for the past few days, distracting ourselves from the tremendous work we have to do on our book projects. But it's a genuine pleasure to have you all here and to listen to our current project, analyzing what Facebook's role is in current Philippine politics, including and specifically focusing on the 2016 elections. Rather than both of us talking at equal amounts of time, we got this agreement that I presented this paper at APSA in Boston a few weeks ago, and therefore AIM will present it mostly. So I'll just give you some introduction, or show you a video of one of the campaign videos that the Duterte presidential campaign produced, and it was shared widely. It was supposed to be a Christmas message in 2016, but it captured, I think, the essence of the Duterte campaign and basically how it won the 2016 election. So let me just pull it up very quickly.
Alam ninyo, ako'y tao lamang. Kaya binabati ko pa rin, Merry Christmas. Kayo mga durugista, magdanakaw, mga korap, mga kriminal, at ninyong nagpapahirap sa Pilipino. Kaya kung ayaw ninyong minto at patuloy pa rin ang karahasan, ito na ang huli ninyong Merry Christmas.
So it's quite unconventional. Mostly politicians would have very positive things to say on their Christmas message, which a lot of Filipinos found, they expected it, but they found it a bit boring. So this message was shared hundreds and thousands of times on social media and seemingly captured the singular message of the Duterte campaign, and that is discipline and a focus on criminality. With that, I'm gonna give the microphone, or at least the floor to AIM, and then AIM, you can take it away.
Thank you, everybody. I've been working on Facebook in Southeast Asian politics for the past 4 years, but this is my first venture outside of Thailand into the Philippines. So I'm very glad to be collaborating with Aries, but also Dimitar Groja from Syracuse University, who's helping us with the survey design of part of this project. So very much like your president, Duterte came to power promising change. More details can be asked to Aries about all of the things he has said that has been outrageous, but I think you've all seen from television and commentaries that he's sort of like Trump in many ways. But so this, I'm going to be bringing Trump in a little bit to give some comparative perspective, but most of this research is just focusing on him and the other 4 running presidential candidates during the 3-month period of the election campaign in 2016, which was the Philippines' first Facebook election. Southeast Asia is an amazing region in terms of social media engagement because it actually has the highest rate of Facebook and social media penetration within the online population. Between 90 to 94% of all online population in most Southeast Asian countries are on Facebook. In some countries like Myanmar and Cambodia, this is it, right? They don't know what the internet is Facebook, right? And this gives, and the transformation these societies go through as they enter the online space is really dramatic and really should be better captured in how they impact politics. So what we're trying to figure out, everybody says it's the first Facebook election in the Philippines because the first national election where Facebook played a critical role. And by 2016, nearly 50% of all the Filipinos were online. So we've already reached a tipping point where Facebook has become quite mainstream, right? So it's no longer a 20%, 25% range, which is where Cambodia currently sits. Myanmar is zooming through, having gone from 1% connectivity in 2011 to now nearly 50. Very dramatic change, right? So we're trying to figure out, how Facebook play a role, but also what makes a successful and effective social media campaigning, which is something that we could speak to other countries around the world. So we argue that we found in our own research through different methods that it's the actual strength of the fan base rather than what Duterte did specifically on his official Facebook page that really drove the success. So when you're thinking about social media campaigning, you're thinking, okay, what kind of politicians are really good with social media, right? Particularly Facebook, but also Twitter. By the way, Twitter is not used in Southeast Asia, so it's just we're not looking at Twitter, right? So the political communication literature and the media studies literature tend to look at three different types of campaigner, right, online. The first is the savvy campaigner, right? Think of Hillary. Always come up with sleek campaigns, always hashtagging, talking about hashtagging, coming up with themes and memes, looking really professional, and clearly using PR companies to help making all kinds of official campaign materials online, right? So I said, look, with this savvy campaigner, it's really about how active you are on Facebook. Right? The more you post, the more you come up with memes, use videos, come up with other materials to put on Facebook, the more likely you're going to generate interest and gain more followers and gain more people sharing your materials. The second type of campaigner is the engaging campaigner. So regardless of the amount or the level of activity you do on Facebook, it's really about quality. Right? How engaged you are with the people. Are you asking your audience to come up with campaigns to help you? Are you asking for audience input? Are you trying to reply or have conversation with people who are conversing on your Facebook page? It's the most engaged ones that get the strong crowd and that really helps with the strong fans, right? And a lot of research coming out of Europe in particular looks at the engaging campaigner. The third one, and this is, I think, the byproduct of the victory of President Trump, is about the populist campaigner. And they've argued this elsewhere in cases of right-wing candidates, in particular in Europe, but also really left-wing candidates in Latin America, that it's really about how populist you are. It's about the message and the style. Not about the activity level, how active you are, not about whether you have any good, sleek campaign materials, not even about how engaged you are. It's really about what kind of crazy stuff can you say constantly to get people all worked up, right? And when we went into this project, we thought that Duterte would fit the third, right? He, is quite outrageous kind of a guy. Aries would have lots of examples on this. He made jokes about rape and what else? Curse the Pope. In a very Catholic, curse everybody. He curses all the time on live television. So we thought he might fit this, right? But we also wanted to see whether he really did fit this or he's a different kind of populist breed altogether. So we did a survey of Filipinos across the country to ask them how much Facebook really mattered to their voting decision, but also what kind of activities have they engaged in on the Facebook pages of these 5 top candidates at the time, right? So, by the way, he came in really late. Duterte didn't declare his presidency until very, very late. So in the old ways, he would have a disadvantage, right? These guys have been gearing up for a while. She's young, beautiful, and very Hillary, like well-mannered, popular in the urban, educated people. Three of these are part of the legacy politicians. They grew up in political families. They have huge resources, right? And learning that they've done throughout their upbringing about how to run campaigns. So in some way, he came out of nowhere and very, very late. Then we look at, so we're trying to figure out, if Facebook really matter, or is it an assumption that we think it matter, but also what did people do on their Facebook pages, as well as looking at the Facebook data on their pages themselves, because this is actually most of the existing research that looks at campaign efficiency or campaign success. They focus on the official campaign pages of the candidates, right? For obvious reason, but we're gonna find out later that this is probably our mistake. Not a mistake, but it's something that we're gonna look further that is not the case. So we also look at all the Facebook data during the entire 3-month campaign period of these 5 candidates, which total more than 20 million data points, including all the comments and the sharings and the posting and all the activities on their pages. So first, we wanted to profile Duterte supporters and try to figure out whether his supporters are really distinct from other supporters of other candidates, right? So we found through our survey that across the board, Filipinos are really obsessed with Facebook, and 86% of them found Facebook important or very important to their voting choice. It's huge, right? They're usually young. They went to college. But they're from the lower middle class. This is actually the youth that get really mobilized in other parts of the world that go on to protest and so on, right? They're young, they went to university, but they're not doing that well, right? And they find Facebook really important. We found that uniquely, those who supported Duterte were a little poorer, and really, really early committers. So they committed to supporting him before he announced his candidacy, right? So they said between 4 to 6 months before the election. That was before he went announced for running. And they voted with their families, right? They voted in groups. And they're really importantly active offline. This is very distinct with Duterte supporters. More importantly, they're the only groups of supporters that really trust information on Facebook, right? So they're all worked up, they love him to death, and they trust anything on Facebook. So they're most likely to share stuff and find stuff believable, right? And they specifically only use Facebook to defend Duterte, right? So we had a long list of questions about what you did on your preferred candidate's page. No other supporters of any other candidates did anything remote. They didn't even post a message of their support to their preferred candidates on their own walls. So they support them, but they didn't do much about it. Duterte supporters, all out, right? We also look at his campaign, what he did on his official Facebook page, because other theories suggest, okay, if you're really active and really engaging, then you're probably going to get a lot of people interacting with you. And we found that his Facebook official page is appalling, right? He barely posts in comparison to his other his rivals, right? But he was able to get the most out of whatever little he did, right? And he's not just not post, right? He didn't do any of the populist messaging on his own Facebook. All the stuff that could have gone viral are so good for going viral, like cursing the Pope, doesn't do any of it. Nothing. Like, this is the opposite of Trump. Didn't do anything like that. He actually, all of his Facebook posts were in third person. And by his own admission, he doesn't know how to text. And he doesn't pretend that he's good at social media. He used his staff to do it, and they tweeted for him, and he barely tweeted, by the way. They did all the posting for him in third person. This is highly impersonal and goes against existing theories about how to engage with people on your social media, right? There was no premium content, no videos that have gone viral, so he didn't repost them, reshare, nothing. He did boring stuff, like really, really boring, non-populist, non-engaging, not active, bland social media campaigning. But it worked. He got the most fan increase. Each post he did resulted in 400,000 interactions, which includes sharing, commenting, repost, everything, right? Comments and shares. These guys, right, try so hard. Miriam, bless her, she passed away. She really tried to engage the youth, right? She constantly changed her profile Facebook page to have a picture with young people in the back. And she tried to do cool stuff, always hashtagging and hanging out with young people, right? Paul is like Hillary, like very well-mannered, very nice, always saying nice things, but clearly trying to be really savvy, right? She's a savvy campaigner, right? She's the engaged campaigner. She posts all the time, always interacts, the only candidate that actually replied to comments, right? And she has her PR stuff all figured out. Didn't work. Even the Facebook themselves actually released the statistics a few weeks before the election day, that 68% of all conversations on Facebook in the Philippines were talking about Duterte. 68% of all conversation, right? Talking about Duterte, good or bad, doesn't matter, right? And really just blew it out the park. Sorry, this is 21. So it's just, what did he do? He didn't seem to do anything on his own Facebook page. We didn't understand this, right? We did know from our survey that his supporters are really different. So we're trying to put the two things together, and we think, and so we look further. So this is the network analysis of people who commented, so who are fans of each candidate, and try to look at how many of them commented positively on their own, the candidate's page, but also in other page. And we found that basically, just like in what Facebook found here, Duterte was central to all of the commenting activity of all the people who either support him or not support him. So people who support the other candidates were talking about him, and also people were talking about, and when we're looking at social media, what it really means is traffic, right? Traffic's going up. And Facebook algorithm works in ways that the more traffic you get, the more your stuff appears on feeds, even though you never liked this guy. So like Trump, the fact that you talk about him all the time has its unintended consequences. It drives traffic, right? And then we also look further, and we compare this with other candidates, but I'm only showing Duterte, that Duterte's fans actually most engaged with people who were not supporting him. So they were the only ones that go out of their way to fight Duterte's battles elsewhere. And some of these comments were trolling, right? So then the question we often get, so just before I talk about trolls, so we believe, based on our data, that the distinct Duterte online fans are those who really love Facebook and trust it, right? This is critical to social networking success, trust, right? And only go to Facebook to advocate for him. They didn't use it for anything else. So they already believe in him, they support him. There were questions about what activities you did on Facebook, and other supporters of other candidates use Facebook primarily for getting news about the election, looking at information of other candidates, and figuring stuff out. Not Duterte fans. They've made up their mind a long time ago, and they're going in droves to fight for him, right? And basically, we believe Facebook was most effectively harnessed as a mobilization tool, not a recruitment tool, right? This is not where you're trying to figure out who you're going to vote for, but it's really most effective as to drive fans, right? So then we're thinking, and everybody's asked us this question for the past year we presented, trolls maybe? And as Aries told me, most clickbait farms are in the Philippines because labor is cheap and they speak English. So we think, and there's a study by Ong and Cabanes from University of Leeds that interview actual trolls, even though the number is 22, I believe, because trolls are, first of all, as a person who works on Facebook, it's really hard to observe trolls online, right? Because good trolls sound like us, right? You could, and the only difference is they're paid. You can't observe that on Facebook comments. It's really hard. And they did the hard work of actually locating trolls and interviewing them, even though only 22 spoke with them. But what they did find out was that they had been working in the political scene in the Philippines since 2010, and they work for everybody. And there were actual interview excerpts that demonstrated that there were trolls working for Duterte, Miriam, and Binay, and Rojas. So possibly, right? There were some fake accounts that I saw, but it's difficult to see in a mass scale, right? There are a few here and there. There were lots of bots. But what about the true believers, right? So if we accept the troll argument, then we think, heck, all the millions of people on Duterte's page were all trolls, which is, I think it's far-fetched from the truth, right? I think trolls represent a small number of people. What about all these guys in the offline? Remember, the survey respondents showed that Duterte's fans were the most engaged offline, right? So they would these are paintings on the graffitis of Duterte. They make T-shirts. They turn their cars into a supporter. What about these guys, right? And remember, it was 50-50 at the time, 50 online, 50 offline, right? So you can't, even if you hide all the trolls on Facebook, it would still be impossible to win an election, right? And we're not trying to say, I'm not trying to count number of trolls versus true believer here, but just trying to make a better sense of the scale. So I think, we're still coming back to the same question: what really makes Duterte's campaign effective, right? If all the candidates use troll at some level and engage in some kind of PR campaigning that hire other firms to do, which is common politics nowadays, what gives Duterte an edge, right? What helps him win? So we start looking into marketing theories, right? And there's two competing theories in social media marketing. One is called the influentials hypothesis, which you may have come across reading one of Malcolm Gladwell's books. But it's basically the idea of locating influencers and empowering them so that they can broadcast for you to the mass, right? And the sociologist, Duncan Watts, former professor at Columbia, now works for Microsoft, believes this influentials model is really hit and miss and highly unsustainable. So think about all kinds of fashion fads that come and go. An unknown designer suddenly had her dress worn by an actress, a Hollywood actress, and suddenly she became famous. But how sustainable is that, right? So the idea of virality influentials is sort of like trying to create an epidemic, if you think about it in a disease term, right? Because the term virality comes from virus. You create an epidemic, but then it fades, right? You have an epidemic and then it dies. And it's not sustainable because influencers are difficult to locate because there are many different types of influencers. And once they get paid to work for you, they're no longer authentic, right? They're no longer believable. And we're all about creating authenticity here because we're oversaturated by marketing, especially online, right? So the idea of big seed marketing is taking the power away from the influencers, not saying that they're not important, but that they can sustain longer term support for something, right? Person or product, and rely on a number of ordinary individuals who are easily influenced to broadcast for you instead of relying on the few influencers. These are the Duterte supporters who love him and easily influenced by him. They could have been shown something not true at all, and they still believe it because they love Duterte, right? And this is what we found in our surveys. So it's virality and mass marketing at the same time, right? And Trump's really good at this, right? So I sort of sketched this morning, throwing it out there. So we're not saying that there aren't some fake accounts or trolls. They are part of every campaign nowadays. it only cost me $7 to get 1,500 followers on my Twitter account. It's small sum of money, and it's a perfect tool for people, often populists, who don't have a lot of money, right? Because if you're a populist, you're political outsiders, you didn't come from families with, resources of having run for politics for a long time. So what's happening with Duterte is that he has identified influencers, or not him, because he doesn't know anything about any of the marketing. His social media director, Pompey Lavina, identified some influencers. So some of these are called what they call do-it-yourself influencers. So these are people who have come to support Duterte on their own terms early on, but got really good at it. And they become viral and lots of people follow them, right? So Mocha Uson, for example, or Senora. Senora, which is a fictional character, interestingly enough, Thinking Pinoy, so these guys, right? So they rose up out of nowhere, and then they got really good at marketing for Duterte, and so Duterte's team sort of got them into their sphere of influence. Paid or not, maybe not, right? Initially, we're talking about during the campaign period. There's the anonymous influencers, so these are paid from sort of click farms to try to influence the conversation a certain way. And then there's the good old celebrities, right? These are great, especially in the Philippines, because they love celebrities. So we can think about this in the offline term, like actors, actresses, model, concerts, yada, yada, yada. So they have, we look at all the conversation between the do-it-yourself influencers and the main machinery, which is the official campaign page of Duterte, and there's very little crossover of messages. In fact, the entire campaign period, between the official page of Duterte and official page of Mocha Uson, which is the #1 do-it-yourself influencer of Duterte, she only reposted him twice. She's 5 million followers, twice, right? Barely, right? So this is why I put a dot here, because they didn't control her, not during the campaign period. Then you got the Dutertistas, which are many volunteer, but there are some organized aspects. So Pompey Lavina, who is the director of social media campaign, creates a lot of Facebook groups of core supporters on Facebook that help drive the support. And there's like thousands of these groups, right? I noticed, and this is probably, I need to look more from the detail but I noticed that the ones that I believe are officials are the ones that only like Duterte's page and not any other pages. So I start to see some of the pages that only like Duterte's page. And these are, many are volunteer and many are organized. Then there's a troll. Some are volunteer trolls, which means they voluntarily go and attack somebody else on defense of Duterte, right? Because they love him so much. They're not getting paid to do it. Nobody told them to do it. They did themselves, right? And we observed this in our survey respondents as well, right? And some are paid, right? But these are up for grabs. Anybody can pay them. It's not specific to Duterte. Then we have the non-supporters who love talking about Duterte and how much they hate him. They really help strengthen the support base, right? Because it's more traffic, more conversation, you keep constantly talking about him. But really, what's really driving his campaign are the fans, right? Who are all worked up all the time and trusting of Duterte, right? And this, we believe, have been activated offline. By the time they start the campaign period in Facebook, they're committed, right? And this is what Duterte is good at. He didn't do anything online. He just off the island somewhere. But he does stuff on TV, on interviews, going to rallies. He understood Philippines is still pretty much driven offline, right? In terms of shoring up the emotion, the support, you've got to work your ground, right? And this is what he's really good at. The creation of authenticity, right? He didn't pretend that he was good at social media. He didn't pretend anything. He really stayed true to himself, right? He wasn't trying to tweet, wasn't trying to post anything, no coming up with memes, nothing, because he admits himself he could barely text, right? And if he started to get all this glossy material stuff, everybody would start backing off because it's no longer him, right? So we think the implications of our work is A, we really need to rethink how we understand social media campaigning in election, especially looking at different strategies. The scholarship has spent far too much effort looking at the official stuff and really forgetting about the rest, right? And this is a point that thankfully Alan Hicken made to our presentation earlier, to try to figure out the ecology of all of this. And that you could still be really good online having done very little on working on it, right? And so it's sort of moving away from the top-down approach of analyzing social media campaign and look at the interaction from the bottom up. We think that what really made Duterte successful online was the early committed fans that were mobilized offline, right? So Facebook was not playing a role of recruiting new fans. They were strengthening existing fans. So we still believe that the offline creation of zealous fans crucial to electoral win. Our next project, which basically we're very concerned, or everyone else seems to be very concerned about trolls. So we think, well, okay, we need to take a step back and really look at this a little bit more. So we recently got some grants to study Facebook. Comparing, have you guys heard of Facebook free basics? So we think Facebook is free, but it's not. It costs us money on our data. But in 2015, Mark Zuckerberg launched what he called the free Facebook basics to 69 countries in the world. It's his fight to close what he believes is the digital gap between those with internet and those without internet. And it's the developing countries that are at the often, on the bad side of the digital divide. So he went into all these countries, mostly in Asia and Africa, and most of the countries in Southeast Asia that are poor, and said, look, let's make a deal with the telecommunications company and offer a thin version of Facebook called Facebook Free Basics, which does not require people to have money. So it's preloaded onto the phones, and you don't need to keep going and filling your credits up. It's completely free. The telcos company hedged the bets that if you could get these lower middle class, poor people on board online, then they'll get hooked, and then eventually when they can afford to pay, they will be customers. 69 countries in the world, mostly in Africa and Asia, are on this, right? So in the Philippines, two of the telcos company have signed a deal with Facebook offering Facebook Free Basics. But the Facebook Free Basics is very limited in their functionality. When you look at that, because you cannot click on pictures, you only see headlines. When you see headlines of news and you're trying to think, oh, did China really invade Vietnam today? What do? You guys trying to find other sources, but you can't because you're not paying. You can't go into an internet unless you have to pay. So you can verify information. So we think this really helps spread false information. And it's really popular in the Philippines. So our next project is trying to compare the experiences of Facebook users on the free version versus the paid version in reaction to things like fake news. So that's sort of our next project in trying to figure out whether this Saving the World project by Mark Zuckerberg, and look, I understand him, he's trying to bring more people online, right? That makes sense. Has unintended consequences. So this is it from us, and Aries will join me in answering the Q&A. Thank you.
I was in India when Facebook Free Basics was introduced as a concept, and there was a vehement reaction against it, saying our people deserve everything that Facebook offers. There shouldn't be a two-tier system. There shouldn't be this poor people system. What was the reaction at the time in the Philippines? I don't think they went ahead with it.
Nothing. They love it. Millions of people came online for the first time. The same with Myanmar. It's actually driving most of the Myanmar traffic. That's how most people came online. Cambodia as well, and parts of Thailand as well. So very popular in Southeast Asia. There's been no discussion negative discussion at all. There's hardly any even civil society organized against. I mean, they talk about it. They talk about it particularly in the global advocacy groups, where it's worldwide. And there was a report done by 3 social media activists in the Philippines about the potential fallback of this, but then nothing happened. They love it. People love to go on Facebook. Filipinos, by the way, 5 years in a row, spend the most time on Facebook in the world. Second, Thailand. Fourth, Indonesia. That's what I'm like mean about Southeast Asia. Love Facebook.
Thank you for the talk, very interesting. I have a few questions, quick ones. So first, do you think Facebook was crucial for Duterte's victory? So if there was no Facebook in this world, would he win? And if it was crucial, what exactly Facebook gave to his victory? Second, I kept wondering, what is it exactly that the fans of Duterte love in his message? So you said it's populist. It's like, what exactly? And my guess is that they love his the fact that he doesn't hesitate to use violence to solve problems. And I'm wondering if you would agree with this guess. And I have no idea about the Philippines. So, and then the last question, I'm wondering, did you observe any gender differences among, I know that you said they voted in families, but does it mean that, let's say single people, like men and women, would vote for Duterte in the same, at the same rate? Thanks.
All of them. I'll just answer the last one.
Okay. Yeah, the counterfactual would be, if Facebook didn't exist, would Duterte still win the elections? And the sure answer is yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Without a
Absolutely.
doubt.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Because his fans were already convinced before Facebook.
Before Facebook.
Launched.
So now, what did Facebook contribute to it? Like, what did the online? This is something that is still being studied. But I think one thing that, and in the survey, we even asked the question whether your voting choices were influenced by by relatives who are overseas. I think one impact is Facebook allowed the narrowing of the distance and the divide between overseas Filipinos, which is 10% of the population. So right now there are 10 million Filipinos overseas, right? Because the country is 100 million strong, right? So you're talking about, and in fact, that the election saw a spike in overseas absentee voting from 9% to 65%. That is tremendous. And all of those, I think the figure is between 80 to 90% voted for Duterte. Mm-hmm. So in fact, the third cycle of the research is to really double down on those overseas Filipino communities around the world. Because having gone to Australia, having gone to certain parts of Europe, that is where I've come across with the hardcore, diehard, I don't know how to exaggerate it further, fans of Duterte, right?
Our cab driver last night.
Right, our cab driver last night is
that's all he talks about.
Right. When he noticed, like, oh, you look like Filipinos. Are you Filipinos? And I said, no, just me. But yeah, so I think it's the narrowing of the divide. I think also that part of the role of social media during the campaigning, and we see this after the election, is really the erosion of the importance of traditional mass media, right? No one really, like, people still watch the TV, still listen to radio, but a lot of the millennials, a lot of those who are hooked on the internet, on Facebook, would rather click on news articles, watch videos, and actually watch the news on Facebook. Yeah. Right, rather than watch them on TV, because they're stuck in traffic, they're doing something in school, so that's how they access a lot of information, right? On the question about what is it they love, we could do an entire lecture about this, but I think part of it, Aim already addressed the perceived authenticity, right? So I mean, at the end of the day, whether it was real or not, this is still something being debated, but the narrative. Filipinos love it when leaders or politicians play a bit of a hesitation, right? They don't like volunteer like, yes, I'm going to run for office. Binay already declared that he's running for office the first day that he was vice president in 2010, right? And this is why he became a target, right, of the administration coalition. So Duterte declared it less than 6 months before the elections. There's been hesitation. Filipinos love that. Filipinos love politicians that are not so overeager in leadership positions. Filipinos are still very courteous and polite, but they know that their politicians curse a lot. So what Duterte offers on the table is that they curse like sailors. Like these politicians, if you really like meet them, yeah, they do, right? But for Duterte, there's no facade. There's no second character. There's no second personality. What you see is what you get. That is what was sold, right? So even on online, right? The propensity for violence, Duterte is not the first candidate to run on a peace and order platform. Several elections ago, there's always a peace and order candidate. Lacson, Alfredo Lim, all these candidates were running. So I think it's a confluence of factors. And at the end of the day, I think part of the authenticity is that you have the first viable presidential candidate to come from the South. And that really galvanized an entire island to the point that they were not just delivering votes to a Manila member of the ruling elite. They were voting one of their own. So regardless if you're Muslim, if you're Christian, if you're communist, if you're not, if you're from Mindanao, Duterte's your guy. Because at the end of the day, previous elections, their votes were just being used by whoever politician is based in Manila, Game of Thrones analogy, in the great houses of Philippine politics. And at the end, gender differences, we didn't really, see anything,
Yeah.
right? Didn't see anything.
Pointed out and all.
Yes.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Lex. I'm from the Philippines also, and I'm from the southern part of the Philippines, and I am also for Duterte. Now, you actually mentioned about the profiles of the candidates during the election and really the influence of Facebook and social media. But I think you were not able to mention that there are actually ways of the candidates which makes Duterte oppressed. Like there is actually an advertisement, I think it was also uploaded on Facebook, that a candidate, I think that was Trillanes or whoever that was, they had a political ad that is saying that Duterte is bad and that you should not vote for him. Do you think that particular negative campaign also contributes to the win of Duterte?
You're right. There was a lot of negative campaigning in these 2016 elections that we have not seen before, right? So it was very toxic. I could even mention there was an ad, not specifically stating that it was Duterte, but young kids saying that I don't want my president to be cursing. I don't want my president to have lots of women. So it was more of a moral campaign. So moral politics plays a critical role. I think it's part also of the hypocrisy of Philippine politics. We know that our politicians are not clean, but we want them to at least appear clean, right? And so I think part of there was negative campaigning, but you might be right. That might have galvanized the hardcore supporters. So in the end, for example, the rape remark of the Australian missionary, that was, many thought that could tip because it was released like late March, about 6 weeks before the elections. And the media kept on really asking me, like, will this change the campaign? Because since maybe 8 weeks before the elections, they were still tied. The top 4 candidates were still getting 20%, according to the surveys. It was only in the beginning of April that Duterte reached the mid-20s to the upper 30s. And that never changed at all. So by then, I think the negative campaigning might not produce more voters, but it really locked in. So those who are in the middle, those who are thinking like, in their calculation, they might see they're already targeting Duterte. So it means they're scared. It means that Duterte has it. And for Filipinos, we have this term we call segurista, right? Which is a weird usage of Spanish, right? Segurista, seguro is maybe, right? But segurista is what you call a Filipino who doesn't want to hedge, who wants to vote for a winner. Right? Filipinos love to vote for winners. And when they saw that Duterte was being attacked relentlessly, they said like, this guy's gonna win, and I'm gonna bet on the winning horse, right? So electability is important, and Duterte did not reach that until the negative campaigns happened, and even until the outgoing president was already panicking, making statements like Duterte is a threat to democracy. Nobody listened. Started to strike a bargain between the two candidates to bond together. One will withdraw, whether it was Grace Poe or Rojas. Even 48 hours before the elections, there were talks about one of them should surrender and say that if you're going to vote for me, no, vote for this guy because we're combining forces. Never happened. By then, it was too late. I think after March, it was already too late. Duterte has had it, but that never happened until the solidification of the vote. Because there were still a lot of bench sitters, and I think the debates helped a bit. It did not really help Duterte like come across with new messages, but they saw how consistent the messaging is, and they also saw the flaws of the other candidates. They know Duterte's flaws because Duterte was like, here's me, right? But they saw how panicky the other campaigns were, and Filipinos love to vote for a winner, and so there you go. I think that could be an explanation.
So this is what we observe on Facebook, right? So blue are people who didn't like Duterte, but were commenting on Duterte's page, mostly negatively, right? And the reds are the ones who are Duterte's fans. So we did the same graphs with all the other candidates, and what we found was that all the reds, which are the fans of other candidates, were all hanging out together off here and not engaged at all with the non-fans. They were not talking to the non-supporters. The only ones that who were defending Duterte basically were Duterte's fans, and this I believe strengthened their support base, but also of course drive traffic, right? So the more interaction the fans get, even if defending him or replying to negative comments, the better off Duterte is online. So the negative comments, which is probably the same as negative campaigning, was really helping his traffic up. And we didn't see that with other candidates.
I have a further question on the profiles of the Facebook users that are supporting Duterte.
Yeah.
So you give like this kind of like socioeconomic profile on like whether they vote with family or whether they are poor, what their income is. I want to know a little bit more on the Facebook activity. So
yeah.
So for their Facebook activity, like the contents that they post, like what kind of content that they are posting, like how united among their contents are. Like for example, an extreme version will be just copy-paste comments. Like you have this like standard comment like critically attacking the other like candidates, and then like they just like copy and paste from like one very popular user, or like are they like coming up with new content, or are they just posting like links to like maybe fake news or different news sources? Like also like are they just like in their Facebook total activity, are they just posting political content, or are they posting what is the ratio of their political content among their like total contents that they are sharing on Facebook? And then, like when are they are Facebook founded? When are their Facebook profile founded? Like I would like to know a little bit about meeting.
Sure.
Yeah.
So in the survey, we asked, what did you do on Facebook related to during the campaign, right? And we have options up to support my candidate, to find out more about other candidates, to read news about general election, and so on and so forth. So the supporters of the other candidates were doing all the other things except for supporting their own candidates. And Duterte supporters, the reverse. Didn't read news, didn't try to read about other candidates, just supported him. I did a smaller sample of so what you're asking is the qualitative content analysis, which is highly important. We didn't do much of that across the board in this project. This is we're looking at different things, but I did look at the first 1,000 comments on Duterte's page only, and about 70% are Duterte is the best. right? And all for all sorts of different reasons. But you can imagine that Facebook comments is more like reading YouTube comments, right? People don't really spend time engaging with policies, right? It's not high quality comment. They're just like, yeah, okay, you know, that kind of thing. There's, I would say, about 5%, which is composed of bots and junk. So junk is things like random posts about, you know, come to my store, there's a discount. It's because the page is going viral, and Facebook has Facebook advertising has this thing where it's filtering viral pages for you, and as a small business, you're trying to insert your product into those automatically. So that's what's happening. There are some blank ones. Very few, but some. So those are probably fake accounts. And the other 20%, I would say, are negative. But 70%, like, yeah, you know, that kind of thing. But not high quality. Like, the people don't spend time arguing about, oh, how many people actually, what is war on drugs? None like that, yeah.
So I'm still trying to understand the consequential impact of the social media for winning the election. So you said it's not a mobilization.
It is a mobilization.
Or it's not a recruitment tool, it's a mobilization tool. So I'm not a political scientist. So can you clarify with more precision what kind of activities or functions of mobilization the social media and the campaign served? And then how do you disaggregate the consequentiality of social media mobilization from the offline mobilization, which you have referenced repeatedly as very important?
Yeah. So a quick way to say that was the second one is I don't know, right? So we are trying to figure out first if it matters at all. We assume that it does to the voting decision, but we don't know. And secondly, are we observing different kinds of behavior online of people who support the dictator versus other non-supporters? So why I said is why we think it's a particularly most useful as a mobilization tool, not recruitment tools, because we found that the terror supporters were only using it for that. They didn't use it to find out about other candidates, they didn't use it to do anything else. So by the time they arrive on Facebook, the campaign start, that's all they did, right? They help him improve the metrics, right? So this is the, if you hire any social media campaign company to improve your metrics performance of your social media campaign, they will do this. How much interaction can you get from your networks? How many more fans can you get? How many, the crux of social networking sites is about sharing. This is the best marketing tool. You're sharing them through your networks, right? 1 out of 10, there's a researcher, I forget where they're from marketing in 2013, which says 1 out of 10 Americans decide what the other 9 vote, eat, and where they eat and where they shop. Right? The power of social media is 6-degree separation, right? So the sharing part is critical, right? So the metrics that most social media companies use in measuring performance of a campaign online is really about the degree of interaction, right? How much can be shared, how much is commented, and how much in traffic basically you get divided by the number of posts you do, right? So the more you can get your supporters, right, to do more of this, right, the more successful your social media campaign is. Now, whether or not, right, so I can't say for certain how much it matters to the actual number of people who voted, but given the characteristic of his supporters, they have already decided before they come on Facebook that they're voting for him. So this is hence our conclusion that without Facebook, he would have won anyway. So they're just strengthening his base and help and create, basically making him going viral, even amongst people who didn't support him, right? All 68% of the conversation of the entire Facebook was talking about him. That's virality and marketability online. That's how you measure performance metrics online, right?
So I'm going to ask the same question again, and it goes back to this earlier question as well, which is you know, you're the single in that diagram you had the big arrow, the single biggest factor is his offline the offline devotion, offline authenticity. So this maybe I could just rephrase these previous two questions in a very rudimentary way, which is it looks to me like what you have here is Facebook is simply amplifying something that's already there.
Yep.
How does the already there get there?
Yep.
How do people know Duterte such that they know he's authentic offline? They're not getting that online. So how are they getting it?
Well, what I can tell is that when the first voting preferences, like surveys, were released, leading to the elections, I can distinctly remember this was September 2015 or even like July 2015. Duterte was already in the running, right? So he was placed like 4th or 5th, with basically like 15%, expressing that if elections were today, they would have voted for him, right? But to get him there, he was already like a name that people know, but basically because of his long mayoral stint in Davao City. So it's not as if he's a complete outsider, like a non-politician. He's been mayor of Davao for 20 years, right? And basically, part of the story goes is that he transformed Davao from basically a backwater, communist-infested, terrorist-infested, highly poor city to basically a not Singapore, but like maybe half of Singapore, half or a third, right? And that goes to the magical story. And how did we get there? Because there was a lot of discontent, particularly from Metro Manila. I lived in Metro Manila all my life, and for me to vote someone from Mindanao, like for me or maybe people who live in Manila, is a big thing. It's a big thing. Like we talk about the divides, there's a north and south divide in the Philippines, right? And for Duterte to win Manila itself is something that other regional-based candidates were not able to do, right? So how do we get there? That is still something that is a confluence of what Duterte did and what the context is. What was the political climate? What were people looking for in a leader? They were not looking for someone who is polished, who is Ivy League educated, who speaks perfect English, which we normally look for in previous elections. They were looking for someone who could get things done, regardless of the costs. And that is the one that I think the bargain that most Filipino voters are now remorsing over.
But the question is, how do people know that? Are they getting it from newspapers, from gossip, from radio, from television? I mean, what you shifted from the focusing on the media, which
Right.
is to talk about Facebook,
Right.
to you shifted to the content of his reputation.
Yeah.
The question is, how does that?
Yeah, I agree
If
with.
people are not watching TV, particularly young people are not getting it from TV, and they're not getting it from Facebook, how are they getting it?
No, they did. I mean, the traditional media play a great role. So when we first went into this project, we think Facebook makes a huge difference somehow. That was our assumption, right? This is the first time that it's 50% online and Filipinos use Facebook. So we went into this thinking that it would have made a difference. But at the end of the study, we're thinking the real difference is offline. And we're still trying to figure that out as well, right? So, and I think this provides some kind of cautionary tale as well for researchers who are only looking at stuff online, right? It's just part of the ecology. And Alan told me this several times, right? And I think I'm not saying that the arena is not critical, it is. But once you figure out how it's critical, we need to really go back again, right? Especially in a country like this.
Might mean though,
Yeah.
might not necessarily mean offline, it just might be pre-election, right? So it might be they'll be getting information on Facebook, but it's prior to election campaign.
Yeah.
So those attitudes might be formed the year before because of
Yeah.
prior posts, about their cleaning up crime and
Let me give you a comparative perspective. So I did a study on Thailand on an old politician, Suthep, who had been a politician in the 70s and not an outside politician, the main opposition. He was basically a cabinet minister, right? And he really transformed on Facebook. He didn't transform anywhere else. And I knew this because when he left the political party to join street politics, he reinvented his entire persona on Facebook. So he gone from having 30,000 likes on Facebook to 3 million in 1 month. And he became the leader of the opposition that overthrew the government. And his persona was all cultivated on Facebook because most of the his supporters were urban, middle class, networked on Facebook people. So I could really see the critical role Facebook played there really distinctly, because you can see his entire career had not, and he did it himself. He didn't decentralize it. He didn't outsource it. He did it all himself. He really transformed. But we didn't observe this in Duterte's case, and we were surprised. We had thought he would be like Trump. Trump is good at this. He actually controlled and managed his own social media campaign, not Duterte. So I'm beginning to think there's two kind of social media populists going on here. Both are effective, but it really, really depends on the kind of base they're playing with. And so having, we're sort of talking about, okay, the political context of how we got this at all, right? But just the idea that Facebook didn't help create new fans that are strong enough to help fight your battle. It's already an important message to politicians that you really got to go and build this first. And Facebook is just helping you along the way, but it's not going to create, in this case, new committed fans. And I think that's an important lesson.
All right, I would like to have you join me in thanking our guests for speaking today. I'm sure that they